My mother-in-law jeopardized my career, so I kicked her out of the house. Years later, she tried using a life-threatening accident to weasel her way back into my life. So my mother-in-law is a gossip queen whilst I'm a divorce attorney. And recently, she went through my confidential case files behind my back. She was in town for my husband's birthday when she did this. But when I found out, I was so furious I got her an Uber to the airport and told her to leave the house. She reluctantly did. But soon after, I got a call from my husband asking what happened. He seemed quite mad, and this didn't surprise me because I instantly thought that he had spun the situation her way. I told him what actually happened, and he was just confused. Of course, he had already talked to MIL, so he knew she was at the airport, and he knew roughly what happened. She, truthfully, told him her version of what happened, and tried to make it seem like I blew the whole thing out of proportion and was planning on suing her for this. I ended up explaining that this was not the case, but did tell him we needed to buy her a plane ticket because she wasn't welcomed back in our home. I made it clear to him that this was my stance on the issue, and he agreed. I was so relieved when he sided with me. He didn't try to justify her actions, and he said he understood how bad this could have been for me and for us. We just closed on our home 2 months ago, so going down to one income would have been a financial disaster. Him and I were kind of sad that her trip ended this way, but it's not something Mill and I can just heart to heart right now. What happened next was not something I expected. However, MIL called us having a pity party at the airport for almost 9 hours because she forgot her wallet at our place. She wanted my husband to drive it to her because how else would she board a flight home without ID? This could sound reasonable, but her wallet was on the neatly made bed in the room she was staying in. It was so obvious that this was just her way of trying to talk my husband into letting her stay. Well, he had to go down to the airport regardless to give her the wallet. When he gets there, hours go by, and he's still there. I knew this was going to happen because the plane ticket I had bought her wasn't until very early the next morning, and she probably wanted to spend more time with her son. I don't know what happened at the airport at all, but I do know that when my husband came home from the airport, crap went down. Despite being a super calm person, he came into the house like a hurricane. Doors were slammed, keys were thrown. He even felt compelled to kick a dog toy, which only made the dog happily run after it and break all tension. Apparently, his hours-long conversation with his mother was frustrating but productive. The summary of it is, Mill spent an hour trying to minimize the situation. She doesn't think what she did was that big of a deal because of family loyalty or whatever. Of course, she will never say anything about the case because we are her family. It was then that my husband showed the world his diamond spine. He told her that if family was so important to her, then she would not have hurt me like this, and that I am her family because I am his family. Swoon. She seemed to start getting how serious the situation is at this point, because of course it's not that big of a deal until her precious baby is hurting. He then went on to say how this could have hurt him. He told her how much we as a couple invested in my career and how we could have lost the house because of her. He told her that now that I was finally practicing, that it was his turn to go back to grad school, and how she could have completely annihilated that option. It was around this time that she started ugly crying. She said she is so sorry. She won't say anything to anybody about what happened. She will never ruin our family, and that what she did is indeed unacceptable. So she finally understood the gravity of what happened. He told her that what she did was a non-negotiable deal, a crumpled piece of paper. When I went to the tow yard to get insurance figured out, and I saw how her vehicle looked, I felt like the wind was knocked out of me. We were very lucky. She only suffered from a broken leg and fractured wrist, but it could have been so much worse. Naturally, Emil's sister was in a frenzy and needed to see her daughter ASAP. You see, she was so emotional about the whole ordeal, she asked my Emil to come along for support. This is all extremely relevant, by the way, I promise. Anyway, my husband and I got to the hospital first because Carrie lives in our state. We saw her and made sure she was okay, and my husband stayed with her while the doctors did doctor things, and I went off to do lawyer things. Because if you think you can get drunk and T-bone my husband's cousin, you got another thing coming. Mel and her sister arrived mid-afternoon the next morning, and here's the kicker that makes this all relevant. Emil figured I would let them stay at my house despite the fact I have yet to officially forgive Mel. Anyway, whilst we were all at the hospital doing things, Mel was sitting in the corner acting really tired. Now, I say acting really tired because it was her comical adaptation of how a tired person would act. She was dramatically yawning, stretching her arms, rubbing her eyes. She looked like a French mime. She didn't say it outright, but I knew she wanted to go home with me and DH. Well, too bad. As soon as I saw that Carrie was being cared for by her mother, I was ready to peace out. I was wiped. I gave my husband the signal we use at cocktail parties to indicate let's get out, and we put on our coats. Miel stopped us and has the audacity to say, well, what about me? Where am I supposed to stay? I paused for a second and realized it's not about me either. Fully ignoring her, I turned to her sister and asked her where she had intended on staying. She tells me she plans on staying at the hotel adjacent to the hospital because they didn't rent a car and she wanted to be accessible to her daughter. With that, I was ready to head out. But then the following conversation occurred. Mel, can I come home with you guys to rest for a few hours? Me. No. Mel, why not? Me. Because your sister needs help with her daughter. That's the sole reason you came, isn't it? Mel, oh, she is fine without me for a few hours. Me. Then why did you even come? Anyways, my husband and I don't have time to chauffeur you back and forth all day. We have a lot of work to catch up on and we are going home. Mel, oh, I'll just call a cab later. At this point, I knew what she was doing. I felt kind of paranoid up until now, but she kept pushing and pushing to come back into my home after I threw her out, and I was going to push back. That's when my husband stepped in. Well, if you need a place to nap just for a couple of hours and I interrupted him, then go check into your hotel. Everyone's had a long night. My husband and I get get home. We crawl into bed and sleep for exactly 1 hour before our phones start ringing. And it's the gate guard. The guard calls us and tells us that a car just dropped off a lady who was screaming at him. She is repeating over and over that she is my husband's mother and demands to be let in. She is saying that she used to be on the list, so there must be a mistake. There's no mistake. Mel, I took you off that damn thing almost immediately after I exorcised you from my home. My husband groans and puts on pants to go wrangle his mother. And this is the best part. So before he can make the approximately 1-minute drive to the front gate, Mel goes ballistic. She charges the little booth that the guards have and starts throwing things. Staplers, radios, stationery, all airborne. Obviously, they call the cops who show up very quickly. My husband calls me and tells me to get down there because they are about to arrest her. In the end, he talked them out of pressing charges because she was playing up the little old lady routine pretty hard. He drove her back to the hotel, but that incident made her zero in on the seismic shift in my relationship with her. I didn't even come to the gate to deal with her. She had lost control over me. She could not get to me because she couldn't reach me anymore either, emotionally or physically. I thought things were over, but they were about to get a whole lot worse. So after the hilarious gate incident, I was stuck in an awkward position. You see, I still wanted to go see Carrie in the hospital and make sure Emil's sister had all the tools she needed to do her momming, but I definitely didn't want to interact with Mel. Alas, I went anyways, because I loved Carrie more than I hated Mel. AIL needed some rest after all the excitement died down, and so I told her to go back to the hotel and I would take an evening shift with Carrie. I brought Carrie all her favorite junk foods and some fashion magazines. We were busy chatting about some boy she had been seeing and whether he likes her or likes her. And waltz Mel with the worst look on her face. It honestly chilled the room, and that's when the following conversation occurs. Me. Hello, Mel. What are you doing here? Carrie. We're just hanging out. What are you doing here, Emil? Where's Mom? Mel. She took a taxi to Target. She packed so quickly that she forgot a few things. Carrie. Oh, I'm going to call her. Maybe she can pick up some personal items and some snacks for me. Carrie gets distracted calling her mom, so Mel's full attention is on me now. Mel. I don't know what I did to make you treat me like this. Me. Seriously? Because it happened not that long ago. You broke into my office and compromised my client's privacy. That's what you did. Do you really not remember? I'm actually incredulous. Mel. Are you still mad about that? I said sorry. Me. Yeah, it's kind of a big deal. And you can say sorry until you're blue in the face. I am not forgetting that it happened. You could have really messed things up for me and my husband. Mel. Well, you can't keep me out of your life forever. I'm his mother. I have a right to be in his house. Me. He only owns half of that house. Which half do you want access to? The left half or the right half? Mel. I would never speak to my Mel that way. Me. You don't have a Mel. So like the top half or the bottom half? We could quarter the home and you could just stay in 2 quadrants at a time, or Carrie gets off the phone with her mom. Mel. Carrie, I came to bring you dinner. She hands over a bag of McDonald's. Carrie. Oh no thanks. I'm kind of full from the stuff she bought. You can just leave it there. I'll have some later. Mel. Can't I do anything right? Carrie gets the most bewildered look on her face. Mel. Go ahead and ruin your body then with that junk. Just get fat. Why don't you? She points to the pile of snacks. I know you need real food to get better. She then points at me. She isn't even a mother. How could she know? At this point, Carrie is tearing up a bit. I mean, she's being yelled at for not eating McDonald's, and she's scared. I feel bad because I know that MIL's anger is directed towards me, and so I get up to leave because I didn't want Carrie to have to bear my burden. I'm gathering my things and splash! Mel tossed a big gulp-sized cup full of McDonald's Coke at me. Unlucky for her, a nurse poked her head in, saw her assault me with, and called security. Carrie yells at Mel to stop. Security comes in and Carrie begs them to make her leave. I'm already on my way out, and then it happens. Mel lunges at me, not to lay hands on me but to get closer to point in my face and yell some more. However, that is not how security interpreted the situation, and they armbarred her so hard she fell on her butt. She gets told that if she does not leave immediately, they are calling the police. True to her new MO, she grabs one of those mauve-pink plastic cups that was on Carrie's bed table thing and throws in at one of the security guys, and then books it out of the hospital before they could arrest her. I honestly didn't think she was in any shape to run, but hey, I've been wrong before. It was impressively fast. I got home and explained what happened. I was so angry and so humiliated. Mel splashed a drink in my face. My husband comes in and holds me for a bit. We talk and I am still trying to understand why she is acting like this. It's very, very aggressive compared to her past behavior. She's usually just extremely annoying. The physical escalation has me very worried. My husband calls his mom and sets up a meeting. She tries to tell her side of the story, but it's honestly so absurd that nothing makes sense. And he ends up being even more confused after she tries to explain to him what happened. We absolutely cannot go on like this. As luck would have it, Mel's sister, who is now furious at Emil for yelling at her infirm daughter, has kicked her out of the hotel room they shared. And now Mel has booked a flight back to Southern State because she has nowhere to stay. The flight leaves next evening, so we plan to have lunch before we drop her off at the airport. A very important side note. DH and I have been childless. Not necessarily child-free, but we like to travel, go to bars until late at night, and do exclusively adult things. It was a lifestyle that worked for us for a long time, but in the last year or so, I've been kind of thinking that maybe I didn't need 2 guest rooms, and that one of them would make a nice nursery, you know? We weren't trying, but we weren't not trying either. If it happens, it happens. Well, nothing happened. Nothing happened for a long time. I got insecure and suspicious. Long story short, the doctor says it's me. It honestly absolutely crushed me. The fact that I was not able to conceive. Anyway, now back to the lunch. Emile has not saved for retirement. Like, at all. So over lunch, she suggested that when we were ready to have kids, she would move in with us and take care of the baby. That was her retirement plan. So because we know we aren't going to have any biological kids, and that the fostering to adopt option may yield in us adopting older kids that don't need a full-time granny helping out, she has lost her retirement plan. In her head, all along, I was going to beg her back into my home because a newborn was going to be more than I could bear alone. She was just waiting me out. I was going to grovel, she was sure. Well, I guess she really snapped when my husband told her we weren't going to have kids. It kind of solidified that she may never be allowed back into the home, and she became desperate to get into my house because she viewed it as the home where she would spend her twilight years. I was kind of stunned at lunch, so I didn't say much. My husband was panicked because he knows it will fall on him to figure it out for her. But we both agreed that this was absolutely never, ever going to happen. My husband told her flatly, "Mom, you cannot live with us. We like our life as it is, and we don't think it's a good idea to be sharing our—" And then, as if on cue, she started crying uncontrollably. Loud, heaving sobs. And then she said something I will never forget. "If your wife was a real woman, I wouldn't have to live on the streets in my old age." That statement really hurt my feelings for some reason. Usually, when she talks, I just let the words roll right past me. But this was an act of war. I was going to take a beat to address the horrific things she just said to me. I don't respond to attacks until I know that I can articulately stand up for myself. But the shock left me a little weak, so I'm thinking about how I am going to respond, because I can feel tears well up in my eyes, and I know the next time I blink, I'll be crying. All of a sudden, I am wearing my jacket, and now my arm is getting yanked, and now my husband is throwing cash haphazardly onto the table, and now I'm in the car. We never responded. I never even said anything to defend myself. He shut my passenger side door, and I cried harder than I remember crying in a long time. When we got home, I told him no more. She's blocked on everything, and I told the gate guards to call the police immediately if she shows up again. Don't even notify me. She needs to get her own phone plan. Any trips to the southern state will not be attended by me. All the money we were giving her was going to stop. He can send her whatever he wants from his discretionary budget, but I wasn't going to send her any of my money. I'm a real woman, goddammit. I don't need to shoot a baby out of my womanhood to know that.